This video was made possible thanks to the support of our outstanding patrons. You guys mean the world to us. Hello everyone and welcome to a spooky scary EDH gameplay video brought to you by Affinity for Commander. My name is Martin.
And my name is Alex.
Today we're getting into the Halloween spirit, yes we know we're a bit late, by playing a gameplay variation known as Pinata. Instead of attacking each other, players attack a fifth player, the Pinata, who starts with 100 life. Once the Pinata's life hits 0, the player that dealt the final blow is declared the winner. Players can block each other's creatures to prevent them from dealing damage and can still target each other with spells and effects. Each player starts at 40 life for use as a resource, and players cannot be knocked out of the game in any way. Oh, and we played with the Pinata taking regular damage from creatures that had infect, as otherwise the game would have been over rather quickly. So with all of that out of the way, let's take a look at those opening hands.
My commander is the Scorpion God. I keep an opening hand of Burnished Heart, Talisman of Indulgence, Commander's Sphere, Valakut the Molten Pinnacle, Canyon Slough, a Swamp and Mountain.
Shout out to Dylan for lending me his Athreos God of Passage deck. I keep a hand containing 3 Shadowborn Apostles, Bygone Bishop, Command Tower and 2 Plains.
Will is playing his Prossh Sky Raider of Kerr deck. His opening hand consists of Druid of the Cowl, Elvish Rejuvenator, Blood Divination, Gruul Guildgate, a Mountain and 2 Forests.
And finally, Thomas's commander is Lyzolda the Blood Witch. He keeps an opening hand of Iron Mere, Soldevi Adnate, Razaketh the Foul-Blooded, Pestilence, Torment of Hailfire, Canyon Slough and a Mountain.
Will wins the die roll and starts the game off by playing Gruul Guildgate. He then passes to Thomas.
Thomas plays Canyon Slough and passes the turn.
I also play Canyon Slough and end my turn.
I play Command Tower and then cast Shadowborn Apostle, a phrase that I'm sure you'll be fed up of me saying before this video is over. I then pass to Will.
Will plays a Forest and casts Druid of the Cowl. He then passes the turn.
Thomas plays a Mountain and then casts Stormfist Crusader before ending his turn.
I play a Swamp and cast Talisman of Indulgence. I then pass to Martin.
I play Bajuka Bog targeting Will, who exiles his non-existent graveyard. Next I cast another Shadowborn Apostle and pass the turn.
Will casts Elvish Rejuvenator and looks at the top 5 cards of his library. He puts a Swamp into play tapped, plays a Forest and casts Elves of Deep Shadow before ending his turn.
In Thomas's upkeep, everyone draws a card and loses a life as a result of the Crusader's ability. This also causes the Pinata to lose a life and Thomas casts Iron Mere before passing to Alex.
I play Graven Khans, which I then use to help cast my Commander's Sphere. Nothing more to do, I pass the turn.
I play a Plains and cast Bygone Bishop. I then end my turn.
Will plays a Mountain and then casts his commander, Prossh Sky Raider of Kerr. He makes 6 0/1 Kobolds of Kerr Keep tokens as a result of Prosh's ability, and then passes to Thomas.
Everyone loses a life and draws a card in Thomas's upkeep, and Thomas casts Talisman of Indulgence. Next he casts Hedron Crawler and passes the turn.
I play a Mountain and then cast Burnished Heart. Will responds to this by casting Crop Rotation, sacrificing a Forest to put Temple of Malady into play from his library. Will scries the top card of his library to the bottom, and I then end my turn.
I play a Plains and cast Shadowborn Apostle. I create a clue thanks to my Bygone Bishop and then cast Rotling Reanimator, creating a second clue. Happy with my turn, I pass to Will.
Will casts Guardian Project, and then plays Colony Garden. He makes a 0/1 plant token and then moves to combat, attacking the Pinata with his commander. Pinata takes 5 damage and Will passes the turn.
Everyone loses a life and draws a card in Thomas's upkeep, and Thomas pays a life to his Talisman to cast Soldavi Adnate. Next he suspends Wheel of Fate, exiling it with 4 time counters on it, and ends his turn. Alex responds to this by sacrificing his Burnished Heart to put 2 Swamps into play tapped, and then proceeds to his turn.
I play Cabal Coffers and then cast my commander, the Scorpion God. Next I cast Necropede and pass to Martin.
I play Orzhov Guildgate and then cast Alendra, the Dusk Rose. Moving to combat, I attack the Pinata with my Bishop, dealing it 2 damage, and then pass the turn.
Will plays a Mountain and casts Viridian Emissary, drawing a card from Guardian Project. He then casts Bone Splinter, sacrificing the Emissary to destroy Bygone Bishop, and Martin makes a 2/2 zombie token as a result of the Rotlung Reanimator. Martin then puts 2 +1/+1 counters on Alendra, and Will searches his library for a mountain with the Emissary's death trigger, putting it into play tapped. Moving to combat, Will once again attacks the Pinata with Prossh, dealing it 5 damage, and then moves to his second main phase. Here he casts Blood Divination, sacrificing a Kobold of Kirkkeep to draw 3 cards, and Martin puts another +1/+1 counter on his Vampire. Finally finished, Will ends his turn.
Everybody loses a life and draws a card in Thomas's upkeep, and Thomas removes a time counter from his suspended spell. He then plays Terrain Generator and casts Diabolic Tutor, searching his library for a card and putting it into his hand. Thomas then passes to Alex, and Alex responds by putting a -1/-1 counter on my Reanimator with his Scorpion God's ability. Alex then moves to his turn.
I play a Swamp and then cast Baleful Amit. I put the -1/-1 counter from the Amit's ETB onto my Necropede, killing it and drawing a card from the Scorpion God's ability. I then use the Necropede's death trigger to put a -1/-1 counter on Martin's Reanimator, killing it and allowing me to draw once more. Martin makes a zombie and puts 2 +1/+1 counters on Alendra, and I cast Hand of the Praetors before moving to combat. I attack the Pinata with my commander, dealing it 6 damage, and then pass the turn.
I play a Swamp and cast my commander, Athreos, God of Passage, who enters as a creature given that my devotion to white and black is 7. Next I cast Xanthid Necromancer, which is basically a second copy of Rotlung Reanimator in this deck, and move to combat. I attack the Pinata with Alendra and 2 zombies, dealing it 10 damage and gaining 6 life, and then end my turn.
Will casts Shadow of the Past, which he follows up by casting Wood Elves. He searches his library for Stomping Grounds, pays 2 life to have it enter untapped, and then casts Squee, Goblin Nabob. Moving to combat, Will attacks the Pinata with Prossh, dealing it 5 damage, and then passes to Thomas.
Everyone draws a card and loses a life in Thomas's upkeep, and Thomas removes the time counter from his suspended spell. Thomas then plays a Swamp and casts Final Parting. He searches his library for 2 cards, putting World Gorger Dragon into his graveyard and the other card into his hand. 3 guesses what that card might be. Next Thomas casts Animate Dead, surprising literally no one, and Will responds by casting Return to Nature, exiling the World Gorger Dragon in Thomas's graveyard. Unfortunately, Will cast his spell before Thomas had chosen a target, so Thomas chooses to reanimate Razaketh the Foulblooded instead. Thomas then casts Wild Guess, discarding a card and drawing 2 new ones. He then passes the turn, and Alex responds by putting a -1/-1 counter on my Necromancer before proceeding to his turn.
I play a Mountain and use my commander's ability to put a -1/-1 counter on Xanthid Necromancer. Martin makes a zombie, puts a +1/+1 counter on Alendra, and I draw a card. Next I cast Soul Ring, which I then use to cast Soul Snuffers, putting a -1/-1 counter on every creature. Thomas responds to this by sacrificing his Hedron Crawler and Iron Mirror to Razaketh, paying 4 life to search his library for 2 cards and puts them into his hand. Martin puts 2 +1/+1 counters on Alendra, and Will scries away the top card of his library twice thanks to Shadows of the Past. Will then sacrifices the 10 creatures that would be killed by my creature's ETB to Prossh, scrying 10 more times, and Martin puts 10 more +1/+1 counters on Alendra. Soul Snuffers finally resolves, killing 3 of Martin's Shadowborn Apostles, and I draw 3 cards thanks to my commander's ability. Martin then puts another 3 +1/+1 counters on his Vampire, and chooses Thomas as the target of all 3 Athreos triggers. Thomas pays 9 life to prevent Martin from returning the Apostles to his hand, and Will scries 1 3 more times. So much scrying. Athreos then ceases to be a creature, and I cast Ashnod's Altar before moving to combat. I attack the Pinata with the Scorpion God, Baleful Amit, and the Hand of the Praetors, and Thomas blocks the hand with his Demon. The Pinata then takes 8 damage, Razaketh gets 2 -1/-1 counters from the hand, and I draw a card as a result of the hand's death. Martin then puts a +1/+1 counter on Alendra, Will scries 1, and I end my turn.
I play a Plains and cast Overseer of the Damned, using his ETB to destroy Razaketh. I put a zombie into play tapped and put a +1/+1 counter on Alendra. Alex draws a card and Will scries 1 once again. Moving to combat, I attack the Pinata with my 23/23 Alendra, which nobody blocks. The Pinata takes 23, I gain 23, and then pass to Will.
Will casts Soul Ring, which he follows up by casting Diabolic Tutor. He searches his library for a card, puts it into his hand, and casts Fertilid. Will draws a card from Guardian Project and moves to combat, where he attacks the Pinata with his commander. Martin blocks the dragon with his Overseer, and I respond by putting a -1/-1 counter on the demon before damage occurs. Both the creatures are destroyed, I draw 2 cards, and Martin puts 2 +1/+1 counters on Alendra. Will then scries 1 twice, and passes the turn.
Thomas removes a time counter from Wheel of Fate, plays a swamp, and casts Rakdos Signet. Next he casts Liliana Vess and uses her -2 ability to search his library for a card and puts it on top of his library before ending his turn.
I cast Animate Dead, and Thomas complains that I'm stealing his strategy. I respond to this by telling him not only am I stealing his tactics, but also his cards, and target his Razaketh with the enchantment's trigger. Next I pay 2 life and sacrifice Soul Snuffers to the demon's ability. Martin puts a +1/+1 counter on his vampire, and Will responds by casting Naturalize, destroying Animate Dead. I respond by paying a further 2 life and sacrificing Baleful Amet to Razaketh, and Martin puts another +1/+1 counter on Alendra. I draw twice, search my library for 2 cards and put them into my hand. Will then scries 1 twice thanks to Shadows of the Past, and I play Urborg, Tomb of Yawgmoth. I then use Cabal Coffers to make a silly amount of mana, which I then use to cast Skithiryx the Blight Dragon. I then use my remaining floating mana to cast Midnight Banshee, and uses Skithiryx's ability to give himself haste. Moving to combat, I attack the Pinata with my Skeletal Dragon, dealing it 4 damage. I then discard down to 7, and pass to Martin.
I move straight to combat, attacking the Pinata with my 27/27 Vampire. Will blocks with his Furted and removes a +1/+1 counter from it to search his library for a swamp and puts it into play tapped. The Elemental is then destroyed, I gain 27 life and put a +1/+1 counter on Alendra. In my second main phase I cast Ethereal Absolution, which kills Thomas's Soldavi Adnate. I put another +1/+1 counter on Alendra, Will scries 1 and Alex draws a card. Athreos becomes a creature once again and I pass the turn.
Will asks the table if anyone has a way of dealing with the 27/2/2s, and then casts Ruinous Path, targeting Alendra. Martin then targets Thomas with the Athreos trigger, and Thomas chooses to pay 3 life to stop him putting the vampire into his hand. Next Will casts Volcanic Visions, returning Diabolic Tutor to his hand and dealing 4 damage to each creature that he doesn't control. Will gets an absurd amount of scry triggers, and I regenerate Skithiryx with his other ability. Next Will plays Gateway Plaza and casts Mausoleum Secrets. He searches his library for Price of Fame, puts it into his hand, and ends his turn. I return the Scorpion God to my hand in Will's end step, and Thomas moves to his turn.
Thomas removes the final time counter from Wheel of Fate, casting the spell, and Will responds by casting Price of Fame, targeting Skithiryx. Alex regenerates the dragon, and everyone discards their hands and draws 7 new cards. Alex chooses to put his commander into the command zone, Thomas plays Graven Khans, and then uses Liliana's +1 ability. He targets me, forcing me to discard a card, and then casts Sunbird's Invocation. Next Thomas casts Millikin, triggering the invocation. He casts Lightning Greaves this way and equips it to the Millikin. We later realise that the creature should have instantly died due to the -1/-1 it gets from my enchantment, but rectify this in the next turn. Thomas then passes to Alex, who responds by cycling Desert of the Fervent, and then cycles Desert of the Glorified before proceeding to his turn.
In my upkeep, Midnight Banshee puts a -1/-1 counter on Druid of the Cowl, killing it, and Thomas realised that his Millikin should already be dead. Will scries 1 from the Druid and 1 from the Millikin, and I move to combat, attacking the Pinata with both of my creatures. The Pinata takes 7 damage, and I proceed to my second main phase. I recast the Scorpion God, and then cast Ogre Slumlord. Next I play Ifnir Deadlands and pass the turn.
I play a Plains and cast Shirei, Shizo's Caretaker. I then cast not 1, not 2, but 3 Shadowborn Apostles, which Thomas points out cannot be saved by Shirei due to the buffs provided by my enchantment. Oops. Moving to combat, I attack the Pinata with Athreos, dealing it 5 damage, and then end my turn.
Will plays a Swamp and then casts Casualties of War. He chooses to destroy Liliana, Ethereal Absolution, Ogre Slumlord, Ashnod's Altar, and Cabal Coffers, and I respond by sacrificing the Ogre to my altar to float 2 colourless mana. Will then scries 1 and recasts his commander, making 8 Kobolds of Kirkkeep tokens. He draws a card from Guardian Project, and I use my floating mana to put a -1/-1 counter on a Shadowborn Apostle, killing it. I draw a card, Will scries 1, and Will then pass it to Thomas. Shurei's ability triggers, returning the Apostle to play, and Thomas moves to his turn.
In Thomas's upkeep, Will knocks the camera, so apologies if things are a little odd as a result of my post-recording attempts to fix it. Thomas plays a swamp and then casts a morph spell. We then have a long debate as to whether this action triggers Sunbird's invocation, enlisting the help of 2 judges and several experienced players, and come to the conclusion that the invocation won't trigger given that the morph card's CMC would be 0 on the stack. Feel free to leave us a comment supporting or opposing this decision below. Thomas then equips his boots to the morph and passes the turn. Alex responds by putting 2 -1/-1 counters on my caretaker, killing him, and draws a card. Will scries 1, Thomas pays 3 life to stop me putting the creature into my hand, and Alex puts a -1/-1 counter on a Shadowborn Apostle. Alex draws once more, Will scries again, and Thomas pays another 3 life to keep my creature in the graveyard. Alex then proceeds to his turn.
In my upkeep, Midnight Banshee's ability triggers, and Will sacrifices all 8 of his kobolds to Prossh to prevent them from dying to her ability. He scries 1 8 times, and Thomas's morph gets a -1/-1 counter. Next I play a Mountain and cast Splendid Agony, putting a -1/-1 counter on both Martin's remaining Apostles. I draw 2 cards, Will scries 1 twice, and Thomas lets Martin put both Apostles into his hand with Athreos' ability. Not yet finished, I cast Sidisi, Undead Vizier, sacrificing her to her own exploit trigger, and I search my library for a card. Will scries 1, and I cast Dreadball, destroying Prossh. Will scries once more, and I move to combat, attacking the Pinata with all of my creatures. Thomas blocks the Scorpion Gull with his morph, and then unmorphs it, revealing it to be Bane of the Living. All creatures get -2/-2, instantly destroying the Bane thanks to the -1/-1 counter already on it, and the Pinata takes 5 damage. I draw a card, Will scries 1, and I end my turn.
I cast 3 Shadowborn Apostles, followed by Liliana of the Dark Realms. Athreos becomes a creature once more, and I use Liliana's +1 ability to search my library for a swamp, which I then play. Moving to combat, I attack the Pinata of my commander, dealing it 4 damage, and then pass to Will.
Will plays a forest, and then casts Prossh for the 3rd time. He makes 10 kobold tokens, which he immediately sacrifices to Prosh's ability, and casts Uncanny Speed, giving his commander +3/+0 and haste. Moving to combat, Will attacks the Pinata with his 18 powered creature, which none of us are able to stop, claiming victory for himself.
Well, that's it for another game. We hope that you enjoyed this gameplay variant as much as we did. Don't forget to like, comment and subscribe to show your support for the channel, and check out our deck lists, Twitter and Patreon pages. Links are in the description. We'll see you next time.